All right. So before we get started, I wanted to kind of go over a couple of things. So the topic is clarity. And one of the things that I realized that I haven't really spelled out is why I went with clarity first and what the process is that we're going to be doing. Okay. So this is all worked around the framework of the word created. I'm going to take a look on my left because I had this up on the wall. Created is going to be an acronym that we use for clarity, rhythm, encouragement, alignment, thriving, efficiency, and daring. And the way that this podcast is going to function is on a Tuesday, I'm going to have a talking head video like this, where I just kind of start to delve into the topic that we're going to discuss. The following Thursday, I'm going to have a guest on that is kind of an expert on the topic. With that expert on the show, I am going to ask them questions and pepper them with the kinds of things that I am unclear on, that I want to know more about efficiency, right? And maybe a specific aspect of efficiency for, whatever, managing my day, efficiency with time spent with people, whatever the subcategory of efficiency is. And then what I'll do is, so that'll be on a Tuesday is when I do the first monocast, where it's just a talking head video like this. The following Thursday, I stay on topic and I have a conversation with an expert. The following Tuesday, I've had some time to think a little deeper on it. I've probably done a little more reading. I've definitely been thinking more about it. And so I'm going to do kind of like my reflections on the interview, on how the topic and that sort of thing is going in my head and developing. And then the following Thursday, I'm going to have a buddy of mine on. I've got a handful of friends that I love to have long conversations with. And we're going to hang out, and he will have watched the podcast, and we're just going to talk about the podcast. And the thing that I like is my conversations with my friends are really wide open. If I'm doing something stupid, that's pretty much what I hear. Hey, that's kind of stupid. And I will get questions, and I question the people that I'm with. My friends know me as a guy that asks, maybe bordering on confrontational questions, right? But it's because I care, and I would way prefer hearing somebody ask me a hard question that could lead to me getting alleviated from some struggle than them watching me just struggle and struggle and struggle. That's not real good friendship in my mind. Anyway, so with that said, I want to start this out with saying, hey, you know what? I want you to think about these different subcategories of clarity and just kind of rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on these, okay? So clarity of vision, clarity of priorities, clarity of roles. This is especially true if you're leading something, but it's also very, very true if you are a part of an organization. If the roles are super blurry and nobody knows who's in charge of what, that's going to lead to a ton of wasted energy. Clarity on how you make decisions, which could be tied into priorities. Digital clarity. So sometimes we don't have processes and systems in place for our digital devices, and they wind up starting to take control of us. And then clarity on health, right? Like what's your vision and your goal and your ambition with your health, and how are you going to get there? And what are the processes? What are the rules that you're going to have in place? That sort of thing. So on those, I say, hey, you know, when you actually put pencil to paper and you write that down, hey, you know what? I think on this one here on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 3. I think on this one here, I'm a 7 or an 8. Some of these, I do suggest that, whatever that low number is, a lot of this is just being aware. If you are unaware, that if you don't stick it right in your own face, you can put something off for years and years. And one of them that I think of is, one of the more obvious ones is going to be health or even finances. There's this idea that one day I will get my health in order. One day I'll get my finances in order. But the fact of the matter is that may not be true. We've all known people that die fat and early, and they didn't. Very few of them said, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to die fat and early." A lot of them had this idea that someday, which a friend of mine told me. Not a friend of mine. I had a boss that told me that the path to hell is paved with good intentions, and I thought it was an original quote at the time, but I don't know who to attribute it to. But it was definitely not his. Anyway, so I want to go now. I'm going to just dive into a little bit of my thoughts on clarity, the things that I wish that I would have gone maybe a little deeper with Brandon on, some questions that maybe I should have asked him, and some thoughts that I've had since then. I love the idea that clarity gives you confidence to take action. It also gives you the ability to enlist others. If you have clarity about where you're going, it's much, much easier to put a band together and get them enrolled in the trip. If you're just a wandering generality, if you're just some guy that's meandering through life, and you say, "Hey, come on with me," and they go, "Where are we going?" You go, "I really don't know." That's hard to get people to enlist. But if you say, "Hey, you know what? We're going to go here and we're going to go do it this way. And on the way, I even hear that there's, and you can paint this thing out." If you've got clarity, you can paint stuff out, which means that you can attract people that are going to participate in what you're doing. They're going to be more likely to commit if they can see it. If you're clear on it, then I think that you've got a much better chance at explaining the story that gets people to see themselves. And I heard it said, I think it was Ed Milet, said something to the effect of that people that are leaders of groups and organizations, in order to get people to come in, they have to have a vision big enough that the people that they're trying to bring in can see themselves and their own personal vision fitting inside of yours. And if you don't have a vision, if you're not able to paint, "Hey, this is where we're going," or it's so tiny and so small that they can't fit in it. Like, this is part of the reason why some people only attract C and D players. Like an A player would show up, look around, and say, "You've been here for how long? And this is where you're at? Now I'm out." You're just going to keep doing the same thing. So this is part of the reason why if you've seen A players come through and leave and you don't know why, that probably has a lot to do with it. Okay, so and it actually, you know what? It actually, clarity is super important just in the world of sales and persuasion, which are, very similar. Okay, so some questions and ideas that I wish that I would have brought up with Brandon. Okay, so, or I wish that we would have developed a little more. This first one is the ability to use AI to create clarity of thought. Okay, so if I'm using AI, I'm sitting down in front of ChatGPT and I type in something. Let's go to an extreme, so vague that it's like, I want to start a food truck. Well, the first response is probably going to be, "What kind of food? Do you have a dream location? It's going to demand more details that will help it to be able to help you determine the parameters, the things, how big could you use a cart instead of a truck? It will start walking you through all of the different things, but you have to be clear. AI, one of the things that's super useful about it versus that makes it so much different than a search engine is a search engine takes you to a destination that's already finished. It takes you to something that's already prepared for you. Whereas ChatGPT, you say, hey, I want to go here. And it goes, okay, well, let's talk about going there. And it'll have a conversation with you and help you to really hone this thing down. I love the AI in that respect. And for me, one of the things that I try to always tell it to do is explain to me why you suggested this or that or the other thing. Because sometimes I find out that that's when I discovered that it misunderstood me, right? And so this is a way that I'm using AI to give me good information that I can take and take action on. And be confident in that I'm going in the right direction. One of the other things that I love about the idea of ChatGPT is that you can use it to red team your stuff, right? And you should never be afraid to red team. And by that, it's something that I heard Timothy Ferriss talk about one time, where he talked about essentially asking somebody to tell you why your idea sucks and why you're going to be defeated, and or hiring somebody to work out a plan. Okay, so if you wanted to come through and destroy my company, what would you do? And these sorts of things help you to realize your weaknesses, and it helps you to be clear on those things that you need to shore up. I'm going to build a castle. What would be the thing that if you were to try to invade my castle, how would you go and do it? Oh, well, what if I put a moat around that side of the castle? A moat would definitely help. And if you're not willing to red team it, then you probably don't deserve to, that says something about you. And if you're not willing to really look at your weaknesses and look at the things where you're struggling, or look at the weaknesses and the bad things about your ideas, I got to question how serious you are. By the way, if you won't do this, then don't start anything. You're too fragile and weak right now. So if you're not willing to have your stuff, your ideas beat up, I think that that's proper. If you got an idea, you need to go take it to somebody that will not just tell you how awesome it is, but they will beat it up. And you have to be tough enough to deal with that. Let me see. So some of the hacks that Brandon actually reminded me of, some things that I do. So I personally, I will take a transcript from a YouTube video sometimes and I'll paste it in, or take an article that's interesting and paste it into ChatGPT. And I'll say, hey, tell me how to apply this article to my business. Or there's some people that have huge YouTube channels. So one of the things that if you've looked into doing stuff like creating programs and courses and that sort of thing, what most of the people do that say this is how you create a course is they'll say, hey, you can go ahead and roll out pretty much every single bit of it on YouTube. Just don't put it in order. You can shove all of the content out of there. You just can't do it in order. People will pay you for the order so that they can go through it systematically. Now, because of this, and because of the way that ChatGPT and stuff functions, you can actually give it, hey, you know what? Are you familiar with Brandon Schmunk? Can you tell me how he would approach this? Can you ask me questions like him? and that sort of thing. Now, as far as getting clarity and that sort of stuff goes, one of the things that I really like doing is giving it a prompt like that, pasting in a transcript, and then ask it to help me apply this to my life. And that works really well. One of the things that Brandon said that I thought was kind of awesome was he said that that when he tells it to limit the response to 500 words or to limit it to this parameter, I just want you to show me how to grow this business with marketing on Facebook, right? So you've got it narrowed down. You could narrow it down even farther if you wanted to. Hey, narrow this down to marketing to men on Facebook between the ages of 30 and 40. And by doing that, you can make it so that instead of getting the whole ocean dumped on you, you can get a glass of water that you can put to work. Instead of screen after screen after screen of information, you can get a small series of options. With respect to clarity, one of the things that I thought about after having a conversation with Brandon was, he had talked about you could have the whole ocean, and even then you can look at just a drop of water. And we were talking about just the flood of information and how different it was from just 10 years ago. Like when Google showed up and started like making it so that we could access a ton of people's thoughts, that was amazing. And it was a huge step between Google and YouTube. It was a huge step from, buying a $200 or $400 or $1,000 course from somebody and getting vague instructions. Now, it was super helpful because nobody knew anything. And now, the things that we were paying, $400 or $1,000 for are actually just common practice and fundamentals now. They're not anything super elaborate or narrow or niche. So that said, when I was thinking about clarity and Brandon brought up water, I was thinking about, when you get the water to be clear, you're removing all of the contaminants or you're letting it settle. Like if you've ever seen a silt out where the water's clear and then somebody stomps in it and just kicks up a whole bunch of silt and you can't see anything. This is very, very similar to the way that that having foggy, fuzzy thought functions. It got me to thinking about sediment and impurities in the water and stuff getting kicked up, the fog and smoke grenades and all of that sort of stuff. But I also got to thinking about, the effect of like whitewater. There's so much activity going on that it's difficult to see what's going on. I was watching some video yesterday and there was a woman that dove into some water and didn't see a rock and just took it straight in the head and it paralyzed her. And it was really just because she couldn't see that there was a rock there. If the water was still or slow enough that she could have seen the rock, she never would have dove in there. And so, with that, the clarity that we get when we're able to calm down, when we're able to slow down, and breathe, it allows us the courage to go take action. And courage really is the mother skill of change and progress. I had a small list of different kinds of clarity that Brandon brought up. With respect to like clarity of vision, where you have an idea of where you're going, where the outcome is going to be. Clarity of behavior. What kind of person do I really want to be? And some of these things, when I'm coaching people, some of the methods for finding this out are, hey, you know what? Let's pretend that it's 2 years from now. You're coming up on something and you realize, hey, wait a second, they're talking about me. And you stop and you listen. What is it that you want the boss to be saying about you? And then once I know what that outcome is, then I say, hey, what sort of behavior, what sort of physical activities would you have to do in order to get them to say that about you? This sort of thing also I've done with, what sort of behavior would you have to have for your wife to say whatever that is that you want her to say, that he was a loving, great man. Your kids, he actually took the time to find out the way that I needed to go, and he was there for me. And I saw him say no to opportunities because he saw that I was a priority. And you need to have a list. You need to work out in your head, this is what I want them to say. This is how you find that information. You get that clarity. This is what I want them to say. This is what I have to do. Now you've got clarity of vision. You got clarity of behavior. Then you need to get this stuff in front of you day after day after day after day so that you can incorporate that. And I will get to some of that at the end because these are the sorts of things that an excellent morning routine will help with. So Brandon also talked about, he was such an excellent first guest. He talked about practices and hacks and stuff like that to get clarity. And I really love that because it got me to thinking about the stuff like he goes for a run. He likes to run. And I go to the gym and I get on the treadmill, and I am finding that there's a difference between getting on the treadmill and listening to a podcast, and getting on the treadmill and pulling out my earbuds entirely and just listening to the machinery or listening to the equipment or listening to very, very little, not even music. The effect is, it's like it's giving my brain a little more room to inhale and exhale. And instead of just dumping more and more and more and more into my brain, it's allowing like the sediment and the stuff to settle down, and then I can be just a little bit more clear. This is something that I'm going to be exploring in the future with clarity. And exercises and hacks, because it seems to me that it is different for everybody. But the state that you get into is similar. It is a state where you aren't. It's a state where, like, I was listening to Andrew Huberman, and he was talking about some of his best ideas happen while he's working a speed bag. Just the little boxing bag, right? And I, like Schmunk was talking about running, and I get on the treadmill, but you'll hear people talk about getting into the shower, and you'll hear people cold plunging and doing different sorts of things. And the thing is that it seems like there's a state that their mind gets into where these different behaviors trigger a place. And when they're in that state, that's when a lot of their best ideas hit. So questions that I would have asked, that I wish that I would have asked Brandon. Some of these, I think a couple of these are questions that I think I wish that I would have sent him in the email so that he kind of knew where I was going. How has your definition of clarity evolved over the last 5 years? I would have loved to have heard his response to that. When is the last time that you lost clarity and you got it back? What were the steps? How did that happen? He said, I wish that I would have followed up when he said that his crew was running at about 20% clarity. Like they felt like they were doing the right thing and knew that they were on the right track only 20% of the time. And I would have liked to have known where he thinks it's reasonable to get to, and where he thinks, where he thinks it really should be, because I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think it's an interesting start of a question. The question that I would want to ask him is, with respect to your job, if you were training somebody to replace you, what sorts of things would you be focused on with regard to clarity? Clarity for the mission of the organization, clarity of roles for you, for other people, clarity of process. This is how we do things here. How much focus would you have on, and how would you train them to develop process, developing clarity, knowing that they are going to have their own agenda, which is part of why you bring somebody in, is because they have to have an agenda. If they don't have an agenda, they're not really leading anything anywhere. They're just kind of like checking boxes and being a nice little employee. They're being a manager, not a leader. Okay, so in the future, I'm going to be jumping into different kinds of clarity, okay? We're going to go into some subtopics. So I want to put together a full podcast where I talk about clarity of vision, clarity of mission, and these would be different podcasts. What I'd like from you is I'd like for you to weigh in and say what kind of podcast you're most interested in. And what your thoughts are. Maybe I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, let me know, okay? Clarity of vision, clarity of mission, priorities, role clarity, communication, process, relationships, digital organization clarity, physical clarity, mental and emotional clarity, spiritual clarity. Oh, one of the other things that I didn't get to that Brandon talked about, he's talked about this when we're having coffee sometimes, is I think it's him, where he will have something on his calendar and then he'll realize, you know what, I actually don't need to do this at all, and he'll just cancel the appointment. He won't go do the meeting just because he has had it on the calendar for a long time. He'll just cancel the meeting because, well, he doesn't need it anymore. He thought he did, now he doesn't, and he's not obligating himself to go do stuff just because it's on the calendar. An environmental reset of doing stuff like clearing your desk, cleaning up the garage, cleaning out the car, these sorts of things. Just doing these sorts of resets are pretty helpful. A people reset. You know what? There are some people that, you know what, they had a place, there was a time when it made sense for them to be in your life, and now it's no longer there. You know what? It's totally okay for them to no longer be in your life. And sometimes you need to, you know what, just say, like, I still haven't learned a good way, and honestly, I've had people remove me from their life, and I can't think of a way where it works, where somebody just, I call them up and they say, hey, Adam, I got to thinking, you just don't fit in my life anymore. Like, I don't know how you do this. If you've got a take on this, anybody can just start ghosting people. Just stop replying, yeah, they left voicemail, but you know what? Anybody can do that. But is there a tactful way of saying you don't fit in my life anymore? Those are kind of my thoughts. Rather long, ranty thing, but I'm trying to get some of my thoughts worked out so that I can have a really great conversation on Thursday with Toby. And I'm kind of stoked about where this, 4 podcast sequence goes, because what I'm recording right now is part 3. And I'm curious about what's going to be the most popular of the podcasts, because surely I suspect that that number 2 and 4 are going to be the most watched, but we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm going to get going because I have just rambled on way too long, a whole lot longer than I intended to. And I look forward to seeing you. I'm not going to see you. You're going to see me. I look forward to being in the next podcast, and I really would love to read something from you in the comment section. Feel free to rant, go long, and I will catch you later. Bye-bye.